All right. Hello, everybody. Today I'm joined by Dr. Maggie G. Welcome back, Maggie.
Hello.
Maggie is no stranger to the podcast. I've had her on a few times about a year or so ago. We had some really fun conversations, and I've been on Maggie's show a few times, and we're good friends now. And Maggie recently wrote a really, really good book, which she asked me to read before she released it. And I'd read this book and I wanted to start recommending it to people going through the awakening process and getting on certain like fixations or sticking points that I felt like Maggie really unpacked like in a nice, clear, relatable way in her book, but it hadn't been released yet. So I was sitting with this book that I was like, this is such a good book. I just want to start recommending it to people, but it wasn't even um, published yet. But now it's published. So I have Maggie on the channel, and that's basically what we want to unpack today is talk a little bit about the main points from the book that I feel are so helpful and important. Like for me, the main thing that came through from this book is that it touches on some really important aspects of the awakening path that I think many other books, well, that I think it's quite rare. I haven't come across any other books that stood out to me in that way. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because I personally was a big fan of the book and I really want to kind of share it with the world. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Maggie.
Well, thank you, first of all, to read my finalish manuscript.
I loved
I
it. It was
I
great.
call it finalish because honestly, the polishing, it was like never-ending story. I don't, so I every time I thought it was like maybe the final one, the final version, I would still write ish in the,
Yeah, yeah,
in the brackets. It's a
yeah.
final-ish manuscript. So yeah, I don't think it probably could be polished a million times more, but it's just that there was a point at which I just had to stop and just,
You had to get it ahead to the
sort of
people.
get it out to the world. So thank you so much for being I think, one of the very first few people that read it. So, of which there were maybe three or four, something like that at the very beginning. So, yeah, thank you very much for taking the time. I'm assuming you haven't gotten your paperback yet because I mailed it.
Not yet, but I blame that on the South African Postal Service because it's not the most effective this side. But yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I can show people
There
what
we
it
go.
looks
That's
like
the
if you can even
the blurred
see it.
awakening to be human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's available in paperback and in Kindle. So, and I just also wanted to say, if you're not sure whether this is your cup of tea,
Mm.
when you go on Amazon.com and you go to the book page, then there will be an image of the book, and underneath it, there should be a button that says Zampo. So when you
Right.
click on it,
Interesting.
you can read the whole introduction.
Okay.
Okay, you can read the whole introduction, and then you can decide whether
And
this
then
is your cup of tea or you want to read
add it
the
to the
rest.
pot
And
because you'll love it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny, Kyle, because I first of all, when I started writing this book, I honestly didn't know who I was writing it for
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you
or
saying
even why, because I just really didn't have a plan. I didn't have the need to like share the story
that. Yeah.
or anything like this. So that in of itself was a really weird experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was really surprised recently. A friend of mine read it and she said, I actually think that this book is for everyone.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I was so surprised by that because ultimately, when I finally got to the end, I thought, okay, you know, I felt like I wrote this book for people who were as confused as I was at some point in this
Yeah.
journey,
Yeah.
like as to what was going on with me. So I kind of must have sort of unconsciously assumed that people who might be interested in this book will be literally people who are already on this journey,
Right.
like they've
Yeah.
had an awakening or they've had some glimpses, some shifts, some openings. and that were very liberating. And all of a sudden, they find themselves like struggling again and like wondering what the hell is going on. Like, I've just
Yeah.
had this like freeing experience, and like, why am I suffering? And maybe even more than before, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's one of
so
the
I was
main
one of
points that
those
I
people.
think is so helpful in the book is for people in that place. Yeah. But you're saying
Yeah. So,
for people outside of that demographic as well.
yeah, so in my mind, I thought, okay, that's probably like I must have assumed the people who will resonate with this book will be those kinds of people, who
Yeah.
basically found myself in the place that I was in for a very, very long time because I had no frame of reference.
Yeah.
But she said she was the first person, first, and then another person came in and said, I think it's for everybody, this book, you
Mhm.
know? And it really surprised me. And I asked her why. And she said, because she thinks that, just because we call it an awakening, some people have those shifts without even knowing that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't even connect the dots that this is to do with awakening or anything
Yeah.
like that. But also, so many of us go through, maybe some people will call it midlife crisis. Maybe some people
Yeah.
will call it dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
Maybe some people will call it whatever, depression. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know who I am anymore. What the hell is
Yeah.
going on? I'm trying the hardest to like
Like an
be
identity
happy and
crisis. Yeah.
right. And so she's, maybe there are experiences that many people might not relate. Like, I
Yeah.
know for sure that some of the experiences that I talk about, a few years ago, I would be like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, whatever. Or is she crazy?
Yeah.
Or
Some of
anything like that.
the later chapters, like the nothingness,
Yeah.
yes, and yeah,
The later chapters.
really,
So,
really powerful. Just to say, like some of the chapters are like such powerful transmissions of which we'll get into a bit more later, maybe. But like, it's not just a book about awakening; it's also like a direct transmission when you're speaking about these certain shifts or experiences that just comes through so clearly in the chapters. Like I would be reading it and I'd be like really drop into that experience with you where because it's like the energy of the shift um is in the book in a sense, so even if the intellectual mind doesn't know what you're talking about, there's still something being transmitted kind of beneath the words is the feel that I got from those chapters.
and I think that I mean, again, I find it like really surprising because I think Angelo was the first person who said that, that it
Yeah,
was like a transmission on the pages,
yeah.
something like that. I'm like, really? Like, because I just, like, I never even thought in those terms, nor
Yeah.
was I like writing it, thinking, oh, I want to make sure that there's transmission
Yeah,
happening.
no, but
This,
that's the thing. That's the whole thing of the book writing itself for you, through you,
Mhm.
is where like it just happens. And with all of these things, we actually don't know what um, like you were saying, we don't know who the kind of goal audience is. We don't actually know like what the
Mhm.
intention is for people to get out of it. But that's the beautiful thing of like surrendering to the flow or the way that life wants to unfold because
Yeah.
it's got a greater intelligence than any of us than any of our logical minds can understand. Like you didn't know exactly what you were doing when you're writing the book, but then you get feedback from people that have read it, and it's like there's just so much power in it that's kind of even beyond what you thought it was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I really was looking forward to this conversation because I was thinking I just really don't want to talk about my story.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
and also because which
I
is kind
don't,
of funny because I literally just wrote a book about my story, but I
yeah.
think everybody will appreciate that when you spend like months and months writing about it and then rereading over and over
I can
again.
imagine.
At some point you go like, seriously, like just give me a break. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to hear my story. So I
I
thought,
can imagine.
as much as I appreciate, you were one of the actually you were the one of the very first, if not the first people that actually made me appreciate
Mhm.
the sharing of the story,
Right.
funnily enough.
Oh,
Because I remember you talking to me, I think it must have been when we just first met, or
yeah.
when you were watching my conversation with Angelo on Angelo's channel.
Yeah.
And where I was sharing my story, and you said something along the lines of, oh, you said this, and that really clarified it for me. And
Yeah.
then I noticed this, and then whatever, I don't remember anymore what that was specifically,
Well, we
but
can
I
jump into
remember.
that just now because sorry to interrupt, but that's kind of a
Yeah,
theme
yeah.
that I feel like the way that this transmits through you is like what I got from your story at that stage in my journey, and then reading your book later. It was like the same kind of deep message that I was getting from the way that you would share about this. So we can jump into that now, but I wanted to say that
Mm-hmm.
it was the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of theme. Like even then, when I was listening, when I first came across, your kind of awakening and then reading the book, and I was just like, ah, yeah, there was something in the way that you were sharing it that really clarified things for me in a way that I hadn't heard it from other people. But yeah, we can get into that.
Yeah, but that made me really appreciate the power of
Yeah,
storytelling.
yeah, yeah. And
You
actually, it's
know?
funny. It's funny that you said um that I helped you that because I felt like you reflected that back to me as well when like after a bunch of our conversations early on, um, you kind of helped release the. I think it was when you started writing your book and you were saying you were actually just going to write a book about your awakening because there was so much in many of these non-dual circles and stuff. There's so much uh, against the story, right? Or like of talking about like
Hmm.
your shifts and your awakenings and your experiences and what happened. And then something in the way that you shared to me that you were just like, this was your personal story and the story was all you knew. Because that
Hmm.
was how your awakening played out. There was something when you reflected that back to me, which kind of also released a fixation for myself of like, oh, of course I'm allowed to share about because this is how this journey has played out for me. Like there's no attachment to the story, but it made me kind of yeah, just kind of release the idea that there was something wrong with the story or kind of sharing the story. um,
Isn't that funny?
and so it's funny, right, that we kind of reflected similar things back to each other.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't know why, and quite frankly, I'm not even interested why people don't like that or like
Yeah,
have an issue with that. I'm
yeah,
sure there are some reasons, and
yeah,
they're absolutely entitled not to want to hear yet another story about awakening. That's
yeah.
totally fine. I totally get that,
But for me,
but
there's something so relatable. Like that's actually why I find it such a unique and powerful book, and that's why I compared it to Ajashanti's The End of Your World. Because for me, there's only a few books that I've read that really talk about being a human going through this process and like what it's
yeah.
actually like. Whereas you can read books that kind of point you to it and kind of talk about the absolutes and the kind of the process of awakening. But I personally like I love it when I come across a book talking about like another human's um like experience of going through awakening and how that looks as a human being, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
I felt. So it's funny, like some people are against that, but actually I find that such a and this is kind of the whole theme of your book, which we can get more into, like the humanizing of the awakening process. And that's why I feel it's such an important book because it really um, makes space, in a sense, for the human side of everything and how important it is to incorporate that all into the awakening, as it's not something that um, needs to be transcended. It's about like
Mm-hmm.
seeing um, that's the fixation in itself, trying to transcend the human. So, and it just it like so. This is basically the main point I want to make. It's like sharing your story. Like there's a relatableness for anybody going through this of like, oh, you're just another human that's kind of going through the same process, not some like idealized spiritual figure, which I think personally I found so I just love that kind of a book. And then this is the other point I want to make, and there's transmission in the sharing the story, right? The mind could be like, oh, or like somebody else could be like, oh, it's just sharing another story. But
Mm-hmm.
sharing that story, like throughout all the stages, there is the lived experience of the awakening comes through on the paper. So there's something really powerful in sharing a book in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember that I was very similar to you. I mean, I still am in that sense that when I was going through like this massive sort of breakdown, like
Yeah.
emotional breakdown, that's what I was looking for. I
Yeah.
was I found myself looking, like watching videos on awakening all of a sudden, and I honestly couldn't even understand why I was doing that, because I had no interest in awakening, in the sense like, if
Mm.
anything, I was kind of disillusioned with the whole transcending thing
Yes.
and
Yeah, exactly.
whatever. And I was actually, it took me a while to realize that what I was looking for were actually teachers who were not just talking. I wanted to hear about like the dark void. I wanted to hear why I felt like I was falling apart, and like
Yeah.
I wanted to hear about the waves of terror and where the hell they were coming from, and things like that. And all I was hearing, and again, this is not a criticism at all, because those kinds of conversations that maybe focus on the transcendent bit, so to speak,
Mm.
you know, they're also very much needed, because they're
Yeah.
also pointers, right?
They play their
It's
own
just that
role.
at
Yeah.
this point, that's not what I was interested at all. And
Yeah.
I was literally looking, I now know that I was looking for teachers that will like bring
Yeah.
the humanness to the table, and to those conversations. And I couldn't find one,
Yeah.
and even the way some of them sort of appeared, and again, it's just my perception, obviously, but like everybody like felt like so like composed and like
Right. Right.
24/7 Zen, and there was just something that was, and they may have even been like that,
Yeah.
genuinely in their private lives, behind the scenes, totally, but for me there was just something missing,
Yeah.
and in like there was like humanness and a sort of aliveness, that also comes with that. And so I was feeling like I was looking at like persona,
Right.
a
Yeah.
carefully crafted persona versus like a genuine kind of
Yeah.
human expression that also includes being the teacher and
Yeah.
whatever, right? But again, that was just my perception. So which is probably one of the reasons why I nearly like choked on my coffee, because I was sitting and I got a message from you, and you were reading the manuscript, and you said this is almost like as good, or something like that, as The End of Your World by Adi Shanti. And I nearly choked, because like I literally was like, are you kidding me? Like this is literally like, you couldn't compare me to, there's not one book that, if you compared my book to like that, I mean, I'd be still flattered, but there's plenty of books that I really enjoy, but of
Yeah.
all those books, that would be like one you could just so, yeah, I nearly choked and like spilled stuff on me and everything, because I couldn't believe it. I probably thought for a moment that you were kind of joking, or just like trying to be nice or something like that. But
Yeah.
then I knew that you wouldn't just say it. So that really was like something, because it so happened, as you know, that Addition is The End of Your World is one of my favorite books of all times.
Yeah.
And it was precisely one of the very no, I think it was Jed McKenna's book that I read first. I don't actually know the sequence anymore. I know when it comes to like the sequence of events and timelines, I'm not 100% sure what came first, but I remember reading Adyashanti's book, The End of Your World, and I had probably similar reaction to like what you had reading my book, that it was like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Yeah.
finally someone is talking about this other whole side of
Yeah.
this awakening process, of this journey that not many people are talking about, So I think this goes back to probably what you're saying, with the telling the story, because he
Yeah.
told the story
Well, that's
about
it.
his
Yeah.
experiences,
Yeah.
right?
And you could relate, and that's why. So I'll talk a little bit why I made that comparison, because for both, like, so I read Ajashanti's The End of Your World a couple of years before you wrote
Hmm.
the book. And at the same, like, again, when I read that, it was like I had some of the initial shifts and all of that, but there was something so again, for me, that was like the relatableness of like what, and I'll talk about that from what I got from your book as well.
Hmm.
Is the relatableness of like how much suffering there can still be after the initial shifts, and again, not talking about it from like an outside perspective, but talking about it from a lived perspective. Whereas like I remember reading, Ajashanti talking about like these phases where he struggled with his chronic illness, and he would spend like yeah, and just how he was like the 5 years after his initial awakening were like the toughest 5 years of his life. Um,
For me, it was only 10.
yeah, you win. Um, but
And
like,
and we're talking about the guy who had some kind of reference point, at least,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. He was
think
in a
at that
tradition.
point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. And you didn't, and that's what I've always found so interesting. It's like I like Angelo. I found Angelo so early on, and I feel like I had a really good teacher in him because he includes the
Hmm.
shadows so well. So I wasn't even like,
Yeah.
um, I wasn't even being guided away from any of that. Maybe like really early on, but still, even having all of that, and like Angelo played such a huge role for me. But just for me, reading, because this is what I would get. It would be so confusing, the life side of the awakening for me, like in some of the stages, like, okay, how does like, you know, all of this come together with the being a human thing, and then
Hmm. Hmm.
read other people's experiences of how they had the same struggles or they had the same suffering. And that's what I wanted to say about your book, was just the making space for, like you said, the like terror, or like really the like those moments. And I've hit that space many times, and I've had it with the people that I work with in groups and one-on-ones, of like, you just don't want to even exist anymore, right? You're just so sick of the human realm, the like, I
You
would call
just
it,
want to check out.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I would
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to the beach the one day when I was in one of these kind of dark nights, and I just was like screaming at the stars, like, okay, like, when are you gonna beam me out now? Like, I'm done.
Hmm.
Like, I'm
Hmm.
so done with all of this shit. Um, and I call that like existential despair. You know, it's for
Hmm.
even,
Hmm.
it's not even terror. It's more the like the despair of nothing can be done to get away from like what's arising.
Yes.
There's no way to get out. It's like,
Yeah.
fuck,
Right. There's no way out. Yeah, we're fucked.
no way
Yeah.
out. But so
Yeah.
what I found so beautiful about the book is I think people can feel so alone in those experiences, that there's like, and that's I think what you mentioned in the book, like you can feel like I've really fucked up the process. Like, there was an awakening and
As
clarity.
if you could.
Yeah, right. But
Yes.
that's like,
Yeah. I hear you. No,
if
I
people
know.
don't share having been through those phases,
Yep.
um, it can feel so much like something that the identity needs to hide about itself, of like, you
Or
know,
I'm doing something wrong, or
yeah,
I'm fucked up
yeah,
and irreparable, or
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
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 I've lost the awakening that I had. I've lost the clarity. I've lost
Hmm.
the path. But
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's like, it's such a important part of the unfolding itself,
Yeah.
where the surrender really happens. It's like the um but when there's just nothing that can be done. So it's like a how would I say? I think Angelo said it before. It's like um you just don't, there's no strategy anymore that can do anything about anything, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, in those moments. But I think reading about those moments, this is what I got from it. Reading about, and this is actually something else I wanted to say, is the authenticity and the genuineness that comes through in your book is what makes it so powerful in my perspective, because it's not, again, you're not writing it from an outside perspective. You're writing of like, this was me in these phases, and there's no
Hmm.
and this is where I I've mentioned to you a few times, where it's like, I think this is such an important book for other people that I know that are on this path and pretty deeply realized, and kind of
Hmm.
sharing and transmitting about awakening, and yet still, and again, this is not a judgment on anybody, but
Of course.
it's like it's a fixation that everybody has to work out. But I was like, that still kind of get caught on the like this, um what do I do about this? Like, why is this happening in my experience? Like, I shouldn't be having this reaction
Yeah.
anymore because I'm at this stage, or like, maybe
Yeah.
not even saying I shouldn't be having it, but being confused that things still arise. And this is what I've always gotten, and what I wanted to say earlier, of like, what I got from you when I first listened to your talks with Angelo, and then we had some conversations, and then I read your book, and it was always the kind of transmission that I got from you is, it's everything can arise, right? There is nothing that is like, it's just the belief of like, there shouldn't be something happening anymore that's actually causing the,
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with any. um, any arising of the human experience or any aspect
Mm.
of human nature. And I think that's such an important, like people can understand it intellectually, but to really like sit with that and see like there's nothing that is left out of this. Um, or there's never a point where you should be thinking that something can't arise anymore, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is one of the most, I think, quote unquote, unfortunate beliefs, especially around
Yeah.
awakening, you
Yeah.
know, because there's such the way it's still being presented.
Yeah.
Like honestly, Kyle, if I don't even know why I'm still talking about this, or like like it for whatever reason, life keeps me at this and like, doing videos and talking to people and I'm not complaining. Like
Yeah.
I can't say that I'm not enjoying it, but had it not been the case,
Yeah.
I would just literally just live the most fucking ordinary life, like nothing ever happened, like this awakening never happened, like this, not as like, because it can also be easy misconstrued. I'm not is it not about denying anything or like whatever, but this whole thing just sort of collapses, even the awakening as a thing and the stages
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
everything, and it just stops even being like having you're just, this is why,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
laughing because I don't know who said this and I didn't remember how it came through, but then I thought, oh my God, this title of the book is really not sellable.
What
Like
the humanizing
this is
awakening?
not a sellable title because I literally I was walking in the woods and I just started laughing because I thought, oh my God, this is like such, I just put like a complete kind of like dumber on this, like on this thing because
Yeah. That's
because
not what
normally when,
that's not what
right,
people are
because
looking for.
people are literally like most people, I most people that I've spoken to, and by now I think it's been so many, I don't know exactly how many, but very many over the past few years. And I think just on the basis of those stories that I've heard, everybody was like awakening and escape from humanness, and awakening transcending the humanness. Anything, get me out of here. You know what I mean? Let me transcend this shit and let me just like float on this transcendental cushion above my life and no problems anymore and not, whatever. Right? You get the gist. Everybody will have their own kind of ideal that awaits,
That's
at
why,
some point,
yeah.
right?
That's why,
Somewhere.
like
And
read Maggie's book. It's like,
and so, and here I am, writing this book saying awakening to be human, and it's like it's so fucking disappointing from the
yeah,
get-go.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Because, but actually,
But I feel like that's its own selling point. Is like for the people that are sick of the whole like again like how what okay so okay awakening cool I thought that was my escape from life. Now I'm here. Fuck, I'm still a human. It's like, and
oh.
yeah, so then it's like okay, well let me try this book now. And, because
Yeah, no, possibly, but I literally laughed because first of all, I never thought of this title as like, how do I pick a sellable, uh, um, sort of title? Because actually, if I thought of it, then I would have definitely picked up something else. But
yeah, yeah.
this just came through. But that was to me, this is like the best thing about the awakening journey. It's
Well, it
it's
is actually.
seeing through a lot of bullshit,
Yeah,
seeing through a lot of illusions, seeing through a lot. It's everything.
yeah,
This is what I'm saying. It's not that those shit don't. And I think it's it's actually I understand why people get frustrated and annoyed when someone has seen through it all, so to
right.
speak, and then
Oh,
they're
yeah,
like, just whatever, you don't have to do anything, and like, none of it matters. And I can see how annoying that is because yeah, I get that it looks to you like that now, but like it
yeah,
didn't, only a month ago or only a year ago or something like that. So everybody's journey is exactly unfolding the way it must. This
Exactly.
is at least the way I see it, and it's completely unique. And like I said, it's not to say that there aren't obviously there definitely, especially when you look in retrospect, there's definitely patterns.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are people who can read my story, even though my journey unfolded outside of any tradition and practice. I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
give my book to Daniel, give my book to whoever is into like particular tradition, and they'll be able to identify specific, in
Mm.
other words, fit my story into the framework and find like where it fits and so on, but you know, but this is the funniest. Actually, I'm gonna quote someone, not me.
Yeah, that's what I loved
I
about
love
the book as well as all the quotes you
the
had.
quotes.
Yeah.
I love the quotes too. Where is it? Yeah, the spiritual quest is a journey without distance. You travel from where you are right now to where you have always been, from ignorance to recognition. For all you do is see for the first time what you have always been looking at. That's by Anthony de Mello. And this is why, when you see, I don't know if you can see it, like
Yes.
if you see this circle and there's this person here. So you start as a human, you go around, you
Yeah.
go through these seeming shifts and things, and then you basically end up
Yeah. Back.
you literally end up where you started, being human. And I would say even more fully human than you've ever been,
Yeah.
only the
Well,
healthier, the saner version
yeah.
of that,
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to jump into because you said that at the beginning of what you were saying there, which I actually thought is a really nice way to talk about it. It's like there's something incredibly, it can be disappointing. It's disappointing to the seeking system or the kind of the
Yeah.
escapist pattern or system that wants to transcend, that wants to escape, that's looking for something
Hmm.
else. But it's so fucking beautiful as well that you come fully back to just this, right? Just the simple being um, of the human experience, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, when you said that, it's just something of like there's the disappointment, sure, and that's something to be. It's funny actually. That came up a few times with somebody in my container, and then I actually saw Angelo share a video from somebody on one of his retreats, and it was actually such a hilarious video. Like the guy talking about um, where's all the cool things. It's such a good video, actually.
Where's the Big Bang? Where's
Yeah,
the
it's
juice?
literally
Yeah.
I've been coming to these retreats for like 10 years. And it was what it was like beneath the words, I could feel the emotion, the energy of disappointment. That's kind of the voice of disappointment that was coming through. But it was
Yeah.
beautiful because it was so genuine. That's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
Pretending like, oh yeah, I'm on this retreat and it's happy, but he was like, sitting meditating, and then there's just somebody coughing, and then there's just the sensation in his foot. Um, but yeah, like the disappointment is such I think, an important, obviously, emotion to be processed and allowed and expressed genuinely, right? To not
Yeah.
um, pretend that that's not the case. That's kind of what I was saying earlier of like,
Hmm.
at one point going to the beach and just like, oh, I'm okay, everything's okay. Like that's the one absolute realization is everything's always okay. But what am I generally feeling now? Like, fuck the universe, fuck God, fuck everything that's kind of making me experience this because that's a genuine emotion.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to come back to was also the beauty of it. Like once you process the disappointment phases and the dark nights and all of that, is the um just also like the vulnerability and the like um of being in the human body, like having this
Totally.
experience of like how um yeah, I'm kind of losing words here, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
um that this is all like it's all already here, right? There's no um like the mind doesn't like to hear that, but there's something so beautiful in it that there's nothing
Mm.
missing. There's nothing missing from this experience. It's so full and empty at the same time because there's nothing. but it's just so beautiful in the end. I don't know. It's just what's coming through for me now.
It's why I love listening to Frank as well. And he's got one
Mm.
of these texts, which I highly recommend, but maybe you can find it's one of his blogs, so maybe you can include it if you want
Right.
to
Yeah.
in the notes. He's done this description of you know that model
The
10
fetters.
feathers?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, 10 feathers?
yeah.
Not feathers, fetters.
Fetters. No,
Yeah.
no H.
And he did like he's like
Yes.
his
Yeah, yeah.
take on it, his interpretation on it. And I mean, first of all, I was just impressed by it because you know me, like ask me to say something in a nutshell and I'm done. Like there's never, I just can't do it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna finish it half an hour later,
Do our podcast later.
Um,
Um,
yeah, only my partner knows all too well. As soon as I say in a nutshell, and he's like sitting down and like, bring me
yeah.
food, bring me, cup of coffee or something, because that's gonna definitely take time. But he really succeeded in like, I was just amazed how he was able to, you know, put all these shifts in a nutshell and then distill at the very end the kind of the whole point of it all kind of. And I can't quote because I would butcher it, but there's a point where he says something along the lines that you come to this point and it's like there's just this and it's like you're no different than cats and dogs.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like he brings, for whatever reason, he brings like he doesn't even like bring other humans. You're no different to this
yeah,
one or that one. You're no different than cats and dogs. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
you know. And it's like, and of course, again, for I suppose that it goes back to what we were saying, that I'm not saying that anyone is fooling us on purpose or deceiving us on purpose, but
no,
again, this whole notion of awakening being some kind of an exalted state of some kind that you get to, and when you get there, first of all, it's best that you purify yourself of everything that's human.
yeah,
Okay, I'm slightly exaggerating, but you get the gist. Like, unless I, clear all the trauma and heal all the things and no longer have reactivity and no longer, whatever you can replace it with any kind of human thing that is you want to get rid of,
yeah.
right? Then, then I'm going to have that awakening or
But that's actually
have that,
that's what falls away is the kind of the belief of
right?
that it's only that.
That is like something that's like sort of somewhere,
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
distance, alone. But like this idea, honestly, there are times that it honestly breaks my heart,
Yeah,
Kyle, because I can't tell you how many messages I got from people like over the past 2, 3 years, of which one stood out for me the most when this is the loveliest person, honestly. And she shared with me her story, and basically she said that she didn't realize that she's actually had the awakening, but she's
right.
been
Yeah,
so conditioned she was waiting for some big bang. She
yeah,
was waiting for something massive, like,
yeah, yeah,
or whatever. So she literally missed sort of what happened because she was so like conditioned from
yeah.
listening to things about awakening
But
that this is like this
I can
big
actually relate
thing.
relate to
Yeah.
that where like for me, and I think maybe you shared it before, or maybe not, I'm not sure, but I also had no clue until like maybe 6 months to a year later that oh shit, that was what Angelo was talking about. But like I was still listening
Yeah.
to his videos because it was still clarifying things for me and like
Mm-hmm.
transmission again, the transmission is in the video. So it doesn't actually matter what he's talking about in the
Yeah.
same book. It's like the raw presence is being transmitted there. But it was a similar thing where because what all that it felt for me was like this massive dropping into like pure flow is what it felt like. But there was no like for the first shift for me, there was no um like, oh, I've had an awakening, or there was no like,
Yeah.
there was just an absolute fascination with um experience of like just doing things. There was just like an absolute,
Hmm.
everything became so interesting. But there was like, I would still then go like onto like Angelo's kind of group meetings, and like, so like doing self-inquiry, and like, so when's the shift going to happen that he's talking about, this kind of awakening. And it was only until later I was having a conversation with someone, and it was like, oh no, that's kind of what they were talking about with that first.
Hmm.
So I can really relate to what you were saying, maybe what that woman was going through.
Yeah, so this is so I'm glad that we're talking about it because it's this is I think this is way more common than we
Yeah,
think actually.
yeah.
And also there's like
Especially
again,
with the way the mind interprets the word awakening, or the idea of this like big
yeah.
thing, right? Where
Hmm.
I've spoken with people as well, like a client or something. I'm like, no, no, you like what you're expressing, the truth that's coming through you as you're talking to me. That's what matters, not this experience that you see, not that it's like the shift that you're looking for. It's more the
Yeah.
like the clarity that I see in them already. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's, so one of the things like that depending on I think it is probably more because there are people that are sort of exploring various things, different
yeah,
teachers. So I think
yeah,
that when you listen to different teachers and listen to different people from different traditions or outside of tradition, then kind of naturally you're more of a sort of more of an explorer. So you're usually
yeah,
people who are like exploring things like that are slightly, I'm not saying that they can't be fixated, but
yeah. There's less attachment.
less fixated, less attachment to like, oh, it has to happen this way or it has to happen that way. But honestly, it doesn't like I'm telling you, like I talk a lot about the prison of the known in
Yes.
in
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in the book, right? And so, I've been like it's been amazing to me because
Mm,
I found out about a lot of things that happen sort of in those kind of spaces, only sort of afterwards. So I mean, I will never forget like that moment where I like saw these like arguments
yeah, yeah,
online and like what is the correct way and the only correct way and the ultimate way to awakening and this tradition and everything else is like not that or it's like bullshit or whatever, and then people just like discrediting one another
yeah,
or discrediting traditions, and I'm as a person who's completely outside of any tradition. I have a lot of respect for this stuff and for the people that have written things and talked about his
yeah,
experiences. But I completely appreciate the knowledge that's out there
yeah,
about awakening. But like I said, I was looking at it from like the what I call the freedom of from the known, or it's
yeah.
not. I didn't coin this, by the way. I think it was Krishnamurti, or whichever one.
Mm.
But and it was just astounding to see that
Like,
like the people
just like
teaching
the
about
goodness from that perspective.
yeah, like
Yeah.
people teaching like quoting Buddha
Mm.
that said, "Don't confuse the finger pointing at the moon for the moon." They're literally so fixated on that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
finger,
exactly.
and which one is like correct and which one is looking in the right direction, and so on. So, it was so clear to me that, all this knowledge can be incredibly helpful and illuminating. And
Mm.
at the same time, it can trap you and it can trap you for years,
Yeah,
because you're so like fixated, even innocently,
yeah,
on this one idea of how it's supposed to play out,
mm,
that there's all other ways that you're just like you have like these blinkers on. And
yeah,
I spoke recently to a really great guy who sort of is my represents what like is like a favorite combination, the direct experience and also a whole lot of knowledge
right.
of traditions, Piers Aguero, and we were talking about. about that, this kind of fixation. And for example, he was sharing his experience when he was dedicated to this like particular practice. Don't ask me what practice this was, some sort of practice.
Right.
And then he tried a completely different practice that was more sort of heart oriented from what I remember.
Okay.
And it like instantly like shifted things for him, right? So this was a great example of someone who was just like staying in this lane,
Yeah.
for ages. And,
Yeah.
even though it was absolutely not working and
Mm.
it was not making, or very little difference or whatever, or only worked so far. And I know that there are so many people who are
Yeah.
stuck in that place,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even occur to them
Yeah.
that there's plenty of other stuff out there to try and all kinds of different models and practices and everything. And some of them won't do that because they are inside communities where you're actively discouraged from exploring other
Yeah. Yeah.
teachers or teachings or being shamed for it or guilt tripped for it and so on.
Yeah.
So my point is that I think there's just such freedom in just exploration of what's out there and
Yeah.
finding something that works for you
Yeah.
versus sticking to something that someone told you that's the only way or
Yeah.
this is the correct way for you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's what's quite nice of the way that this whole thing is going. Or like for me, because like um I came across all of this like through YouTube and the internet and all of that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
such a um like I think that's what's beautiful about these conversations on the internet and the kind of interconnectivity of everything, but there's like less um there's just less of that. Like I had so little, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I just felt like for me it wasn't um I feel like that's probably much more of an issue like 10 to 15 years ago when people were purely the only way that they could get access to this or like the information was all kind of in communities and in traditions. What I think what's so beautiful is with the internet now is you can just see with the people that are talking about this, like how differently it can be expressed. Like if you look at like
Mm-hmm.
Yang or Angelo DeLulo or you or me or anybody, it's like we're all like Frank is so eccentric and unique and like that. And Angelo is like working as an anesthesiologist full time and like doing all of this. Like, I don't know, just for me, there's just like such a variety of expressions of this now that I feel like it's really helping to
Yeah,
break
but
down.
if you come across it,
Yeah.
if you don't come across
Well,
it,
that's
like
the
I
thing,
wouldn't,
but yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. But I
Because
don't.
I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea. So even when I started, I suppose that algorithms have a lot to do with that because as
Right.
well, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was searching and looking at those videos about awakening, most of what I came across was not uh Frank. It was not
Right.
Frank. It was not Angelo. So it actually took me quite a while before I even discovered that, like, knew
Yeah.
that Angelo even existed,
Yeah.
And that it didn't even come through his channel. It was that whatever I was searching something to do with health,
Right. Right.
and I came across Zubin.
Yes.
And then Angelo was a guest, and that's how I found out that Angelo even existed. Um,
But I think there's
but
also
mhm,
was like just there's such a like if we talk about synchronicities and these kind of things, like I think there's also just such a synchronicity of when we find these kind of, or it was this way for me of like I also stumbled across Angelo in such a random way, but it was like I could see that if I stumbled across him any time earlier in my path, I would have just skipped past him, or like I would have like
yeah,
like
yeah,
for me it was like yeah I came across
mhm,
him. It's like the old parable, like you find the teacher when you're ready for it. But it was exactly like
mhm,
where I was like
mhm,
um because when I did, I watched one video and the energy was just like um it just was so resonated so strongly. But I do truly feel if I
mhm,
come across him a year earlier, I would have just been like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
Like being caught too much in the mind. So I feel like that's the beauty of like the whole awakening happening um, in a way that meets every individual where they're at. Like if somebody isn't ready to like, I don't know, this is just my perspective, but like if they're not ready to let go of the traditions, then life will still kind
Yeah.
of keep meeting them along that path. Um,
Hmm.
and if they are, then maybe something will pop up in their reality that can pull them out of it. But I feel like there's a real synchronicity with that side of things as well.
But not even traditions, because
Yeah.
like there's the other bit where, for example, you can be, I mean, no, non-duality counts as what?
I think that's the more modern version of it. Yeah, actually, I agree
The
with
modern
you.
version.
It's
Okay.
like getting stuck
So
on non-duality as a container itself. Yeah,
exactly.
and
So
that's
that can
actually
also
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's also where you may be even aware that like there's tons of stuff out there and you may be exploring things and then you get stuck on the non-duality thing
And that's
where
a
it's
big thing.
literally
Yeah, I agree with
the worst thing you can do at this point for yourself because for example what you should do now for yourself is go to therapy,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
like or do some kind of trauma related work or somatic work, right? And so on and so forth. But like,
But it will find you. This is what this is what Angelo would always say. And I found it so true in my experience. It's like it will find like the shadow work will find you.
oh yeah, yeah, no, that's
Like shit will just
absolutely,
start to blow up in
absolutely.
your life. Like I have the way it's like if life is just not working, well, it's awesome to address stuff.
Yeah. And I can see because I never was, I wasn't, I never could, I was never part of anything, including non-duality,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this was, to me, like, I understand what it means and understand which people belong to which kind of group.
Yes.
And I have absolutely nothing against it, by
Yeah.
the way, or even labels or anything like that. I like
Yeah.
couldn't care less. But my point is that, I also came across lots of people who spend years within the non-duality
Yeah.
and then they get sort of disappointed because, and most of them will say, I was so sick of just pushing my humanness away. The humanness
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was coming up to the surface
Yeah. And I
was
agree
yeah,
with you.
but again, to me, that's non-duality that's not really understood because if you're pushing
Yeah.
anything away, what kind of
But
non-duality is
yeah,
that?
because that's just a new
You
duality,
know?
right? It's like that non-duality is
Right?
this and not that. So what's uh,
Right?
yeah,
So,
totally, totally. But it's
I
just a
can, so then
fixation of the mind.
it's a fixation. And then what happens next? It's almost like, so then non-duality is bad. So
Yeah, well
then
then
they,
you can
get
because
out of non-duality.
as soon as you break out of a fixation, the mind tends to flip all the way to the other side. And it's just a new fixation. But it's just
That's just a new
the
fixation,
inverse
right?
of the
So
because
now it's the heart opening. So now it's all about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
humanness,
yeah, yeah.
and stuff like that. And again, to me, all of this is part of the process. You
It
know what I
is.
mean? All of this is part of the
This is
process.
how and I completely agree. This is how like let go of fixations is you go from one fixation to the next.
Yeah.
You taste the extreme of that fixation. Or this is how it's been for me, just reflecting on my own journey of like, I would break out from one fixation and go to the other. And then that would start to create its own problems because it's a
Yeah.
fixation. And then that's how you find the kind of, the in between that incorporates everything but isn't fixated in anything. Because I feel like if there's still the potential for fixation, then it will play out,
Oh,
of
definitely.
on
It will
whatever the
play
mind
out.
chooses to fixate on.
Yeah, and even the point, it's even perfect the point at which you come and like, fuck this, fuck
Yeah.
non-duality. I'm out
Yeah.
of here. I'm now
Yeah.
gonna go and do this,
Yeah.
That's great,
Yeah.
but sometimes as someone who has not been sort of on the inside with these sort of groups and just
Yeah.
watching from the outside, it's like this is just extraordinary. And it's like, can't we just like get out of one thing and not bash it because it didn't work for us,
Yeah.
when we move to the next thing? Because
Yeah.
I think,
But for me, the fact that was everything. It was like life. Like this.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah, no,
like
I get it.
existence. It's like
Yeah.
whoever like the real, the most, again, it was like the existential despair of just pure despair at existence. So it was everything. It was like life, the humanness, the non-human. Like when it was beautiful because I just unpacked it into AI, so it could just like all come out, and it
Yeah.
was like I'm sick of trying to be a human. I'm sick of trying to not be a human. I'm sick of trying to like it was beautiful because that's how you let go of everything,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
fuck that,
Yeah.
I don't want any of this anymore. Like I'm just so done with everything. And there was a real like release in that, yeah. But so it wasn't
And
directed
and
in particular. It was in everything. It was like the universe itself, you know.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
so, all of this is definitely part of the process, but like I said, to me, it's just,
yeah,
it's completely this, like I said, this journey is not predictable
yeah,
or linear. And it's just that, for a while, you may totally benefit from
yeah,
being part of, like, say, non-duality and look sort of beyond things and, toward the quote unquote transcendent and stuff like that, right?
yeah. And that was so
Or
much
it's good to
more
be part of
adventure.
someone that maybe for the first time makes you question your own beliefs and where those beliefs
Yeah,
even come from, right? So that's part of the journey for now. But
yeah,
then, you've done that. Then next thing, oh my God, there's like trauma resurfacing. There's plenty of unconscious coping mechanisms that keep on going back despite my realizations, whatever. So I'm gonna look at that. So different things are needed at different points in the journey, and it's totally fine to be swapping and
yeah,
changing, or
exactly,
even
exactly.
sometimes working with two different modalities that
Yeah.
seem to be contradicting one another. That
Yeah.
was the other thing that I've learned because
Sorry,
initially,
I need to quickly plug in my laptop. It's about to die.
oh, okay.
Just pause. I'm just gonna pause the recording. All right, I just had to plug in my laptop, but uh, we're going to carry on
Yeah.
what Maggie was saying about exploring kind of different modalities at the same time, and whether um, that's a good idea for some people or not for other people. Yeah, kind of maybe.
Yeah. So I was saying that, for some people, you can totally, like, say, work with a non-dual teacher,
Yeah,
say one-on-one, and at the same time go and do some kind of trauma related work, let's say with a
yeah,
therapist, right? So that combination, for example, can work. And not only that, there are now more and more therapists
that are
who
incorporating.
are
Yeah,
also incorporating non-duality. So that's like a really
and
good
yeah,
combination. Um,
what I feel
I think,
on that, I just want to add to that is just from my own experience of working with people.
mhm,
I feel like generally people, and maybe they're not aware of it themselves, and partly like that's what I help unlock when I speak with them. But generally, people have a knowing in themselves. So this is kind of what I feel when they're like talking about that, of like the points of should I work with this person, should I work with that person, like a trauma
mhm,
non-dual teacher, and I've often just kind of felt into it with them, and I always find that there is a generally there's like an inner knowing, like an intuition, and then there's like the conditioning or the
overriding.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's kind of like, but should I be, you know, because I'm doing non-duality, or like so like maybe they've been called to like process their trauma and work with, it could even be
Hmm.
that's physically somatic, like you've spoken to me about like working with people in fashion, and like all of these are part of
Hmm.
the processing things energetically and physically. And
Hmm.
maybe someone might be calling to that. And again, the body actually knows what it wants, the mind knows. But then the doubt system or the like the co-opting would come in and be like, but should it be this way because this is how other people are doing it and this is like what it looks like, or um, so this is just my perspective on it. It's like I feel like
No,
if
but it's
people
a
come
good
back to
point.
themselves, they're always just trusting that what feels right for you, what feels good for you. If there's no like right way to do it, there's no
Yeah.
perfect feature. There's just what are you being called to explore? Because this is kind of how my journey unfolded. And it went from like working with a psychologist to exploring kind of like brain retraining courses, which were like more of the like visualization, manifestation stuff. And then that went into the non-dual, and then after the non-dual was like, again like all these like the psychedelics, this and that, and it was just literally following. It was like what was interesting.
Breadcrumbs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like everybody has that, but then they just doubt themselves or there is doubt, right? And I've had
Mm.
doubt as well, just to normalize that. Even Maggie can attest to it, where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing with my life right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that.
No, but you made a great point, that like the body knows and intuitively we know, and which takes us to another thing that it's so important about this journey is to go and listen to people and explore and learn and everything, but ultimately you have to come back to yourself
Yeah, yeah,
and that what does feel right to me,
exactly.
right? Rather than giving away almost this
Yeah, absolutely.
was well, people call sovereignty or
Yeah,
whatever, which obviously non-dual people like what self, what sovereignty are you
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about? In which case, you know that they're basically stuck in there in the
Fixation.
moment, but because there's no contradiction in that at all. Like
Yeah,
if
there isn't.
there
Yeah,
isn't any contradiction, right? And
I
so
think that's such a great point. Yeah, on the yeah, again, like this could sound like more new agey and all of that, but again, all of that is actually incorporated in this completely
it's totally all,
all incorporating reality, right? That
yeah.
everybody, you're the entirety, and you're also the individual who has um, the rights and the to kind of claim your own what feels right for you, trust your own energy, and like not have to um, give that up because that's a fixation in itself. And I think I'm glad you brought it up because it's such a key one. It's like that I have to let go of what feels right to me because there is no me, you know.
Or something like that. Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like
And I
that,
think the good
exactly. Like,
the
yeah,
good the good rule of a thumb is like when it's starting to sound complicated,
yes, yeah.
then you know
You
that
can put
you're
up with
like in your head and trying to negotiate
yeah,
something and trying to whatever, which is absolutely fine,
it's fine.
you
Yeah,
know, but it's a good rule of a thumb that when
yes,
you go like back and forth and what do I, what don't I, right? Then you know that you're not really listening
yeah, yeah,
to what your body is telling you, to what you're actually
yeah.
needing, and also it tells you, um this is another, I think, useful, like a rule of a thumb that like when there's real non-dual realization, these questions don't even come up.
No, no,
Like,
no.
who is talking and what
Yeah,
me
yeah,
are you talking about and all this stuff. Like all this stuff completely
yeah,
collapses and becomes irrelevant. So again, I'm not saying this from like a place of like, oh, when people talk is bad, when people talk like that, there's something wrong with it. No, it just we all go through various stages, and it's only normal that the mind hijacks a particular stage and gets stuck in it for a while. And when it gets stuck in it for a while, then we start talking a certain way or we ask certain questions and it doesn't necessarily mean that because sometimes people say, oh, when someone talks like that, that means they're stuck in like the conceptual understanding. And that very often is absolutely true.
right.
But not necessarily. Sometimes you're literally stuck in, say, emptiness, right?
Oh yeah,
Everything
for
is
sure.
fucking empty,
Yeah,
nothing fucking matters, and all the story is an illusion, right?
yeah.
But it becomes another fixation, like you said, So, um, but my
Yeah,
point is that to me, the rule of a thumb is always like simplicity, Like
yeah,
when you go to the back and forth and like, well, should I, should, then you know that at least you know that your conditioning is playing out. At least you know that you're now overriding by thinking that you should not be doing this because that teacher said so or something like that, right? Or because this is considered to be wrong or not okay, right? And the thing is that if you continue to go back to what feels right for you, that's like the most important thing. And even if, because this is how it can get like funny that way. Sometimes you may think you're not resonating with a teacher or with a modality, but you actually do need them.
yeah.
But the not resonating is actually they make you
It's
uncomfortable,
the
and therefore
triggering
you're out, right?
conflicts
So
underneath the surface. Yeah.
but the thing is, what's wonderful about this is to be if we can just see that
Mm.
happening, that's already amazing. If you can
Yeah,
see that
exactly.
going
That's
on,
huge.
that's already amazing. And then you can just stop beating yourself over the
Yeah,
fact that you're doing that that
Well,
would also be very useful because it's
yeah.
just literally like the self being
But
this one massive coping mechanism, you
that's what
know?
keeps it playing out exactly. Is it's like it's
Yeah.
hatred. Like I had this coming up with someone recently. It's the judgment of I shouldn't be having this reaction or I shouldn't be
Hmm.
again having this coping mechanism. But
I
it's like
should not be have this, I should not have this experience so far, and I
and
should,
but
but
that's what actually keeps it playing out is the like the
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
like not have it when it's like you said the clear seeing of it. And for me, what I found that works so well for people to be able to release this is the um, seeing it actually from the coping mechanisms perspective as like a protector, right? Like I've been doing this
yeah,
recently and it actually works so beautifully. It's like actually saying thank you to that coping mechanism for what, because then you're really seeing it. You're not trying to keep it in a blind spot of, because that's what keeps it stuck is like someone's like, I don't want to see this part of myself that projects onto everyone or that
mm,
does this or does that. But it's like, actually, thank you, projection, for trying so hard to protect me in the time of my life where
yeah,
I needed this coping mechanism. I see you. I acknowledge what you're trying to do. You're trying to protect me. You're trying to keep
mm,
me safe, but I don't actually need you anymore. And like just seeing it, and like allowing yourself to see it, but also not like holding on to it or attaching to it, like creating an identity out of it, is just one way that I've been navigating it. And I found it really effective because it's really like you don't need to get rid of that part of yourself. You just need to see it. You just need to be aware of it. You just actually
yeah,
acknowledge it um, as an aspect of you, right? Because it's just
yeah,
something about yourself that you don't want to see really. And then it actually maybe it still comes up in different situations or different scenarios, but it actually stops being um, it naturally disperses itself because you're not fighting against it anymore. You know?
yeah, yeah. But you know, it's astounding because we were talking about traditions, and if someone is like part of a particular tradition where there's like a lot of conditioning around how things should be and shouldn't be and so on. But actually, honestly, that translates to everyone else. As you know, the thing unfolded without any tradition. And even I had some ideas about what awakened person
Yeah.
is like, right? Like I remember the first time some of the teachers, I was like, when eventually I joined like a group with a
Mm.
teacher, like group meetings. And, you know, I remember thinking that she was moody
Right, right.
and or that she was like she was like to at least the way I perceived it or like I perceived that she was like irritated by somebody's question, for example. And I was like,
That shouldn't be happening.
is that what like is that like what awakened person is moody? Like and they get irritated and like reactive of all things, and I'm so freaking grateful that
Yeah.
she was exactly the way she was. And maybe she,
It just
or
shows
even
you want to
or
love.
maybe it was even only my perception. I have no idea, right? But I just remember thinking that she had clearly to me different moods,
Mm.
and she was clearly getting irritated by certain questions or like, but
Mm.
not in a place not irritated in a sense that like with the person, but it's like
Yeah.
just kind of impatient and
Yeah.
just showing this person like you're just like
Oh
stuck
yeah.
in your head with this question as opposed to like whatever, right? But even then, I was like looking back at it, I was laughing at myself because I was just like appalled. I was like, this
And
is
it,
what fucking enlightened person
yeah.
is like, let alone anything else, let alone than hearing stories about teachers literally losing their shit and like
Yeah. Yeah.
shouting at people or like Daniel told me the story of Buddha, who apparently there was like a story somewhere that was written that he got so irritated with his students that he literally just like stood up and left, and went into like the
But I
bushes
mean,
or
yeah.
forest or whatever. And it's like, why aren't we telling these stories?
Oh,
Where
but
is
I
this?
love that. Like,
This ideal, and I think that maybe I don't know if I did a good job doing that in the book, but I hope
yeah.
that I kind of, if anything, just maybe encourage people to see that we all carry, even not being aware of it, some kind of ideal of this awakened person or enlightened person should be like,
Yeah.
and which is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just complete nonsense. And I think that you and I have this in common
Yeah.
because I
Like,
remember you're saying to me something like, well, no, to me it's the opposite. Like the more human, the more relatable, and so
yeah.
on. That to me is an indication of enlightenment versus
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this like
Exactly. Yeah.
detached. And some people might, there are people that are genuinely more introverted, okay? They are speaking quietly, they are speaking slowly, they are sort of zen like that just
Mm.
naturally, because that's their personality.
Yeah.
So like we don't want to like take it the other way
Yeah.
around and you
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with that. That's not what I mean, but I'm just saying that there's this like, and I suppose that this whole conversation was primarily about that, is just to be aware how much of conditioning there is around awakening and this ideal of what that is like once you get there, so to
Yeah.
speak. And then also the idealist version of an awakened person that we no longer perceive as just a regular, still regular human.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, people get offended. Some people get offended if you even suggest that Buddha was still freaking human,
Yeah. But that's,
or
and I think that's like one of the final views, or just from my own thing, in like the dropping of of the pedestal that anybody is on. Like it's almost its own. Um, and another thing that came to mind, like what you were saying, is like I often think back to the story of Jesus, like flipping tables at
yeah,
the marketplace. I don't know if you,
totally.
yeah, like pure, like again, like one of the most enlightened kind of expressions of forgiveness and unconditional love and all of that. And that could play out in pure rage, like in the moment, because that's what was genuine in his expression. So that's
Mm.
the version that comes to mind when we're talking about like
And
another
yet this
another example of enlightened, beings expressing the full range of human, emotions. And I feel like that's a transmission in itself. It was like this,
yeah,
um, like, yeah, breaking people out of there, like, what the fuck is actually going on? like wake up,
yeah.
right? In that context.
Even anger, can, because I think anger is too, first of all, is one of the most suppressed, I think,
Yes,
human emotions
especially in the
ever,
spiritual, especially
especially within spiritual realms, so to speak.
yeah,
And it's something that many people, including myself, had to get to grips with and actually
yeah,
learn what it even means
yeah,
to experience anger, not as something wrong, but as just a, very normal
like a
human
very
emotion,
authentic,
but that there's a
yeah,
authentic, yes, and also to not equate anger with hatred, because
yeah,
those are two very different things. And actually, anger can be really powerful
yeah,
energy to work with and also to use even for good, for
yeah,
change, and so on,
yeah,
providing that it's energy as anger as energy and not anger as a playing out of
right, yeah,
shadow or
yeah,
some kind of unresolved
yeah,
stuff, because unfortunately a lot of activism these days
yeah, 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 for sure.
really is not about the cause. Very often it's a bunch of people that are playing out a lot of unresolved stuff and using the noble cause as a way to do that, and again, I
Yeah.
totally get that, because most of them are probably not even aware that they're doing that. But then you're basically fighting, you know with
Yeah,
the same
it's
with the
projecting
same
it outwardly, like is what I see in that. It's like
yeah,
the embodiment of anger as like a raw truth, as opposed to the project. Like if you're talking about like social activism, that's like the projection of like I'm not okay because he's doing that and she's doing this, and that's like there where it's like everything is
yeah,
innocent and everything is okay, and the experience of anger in my body and like not wanting to um you know, let something happen in a certain way and truly honoring and embodying that anger, as opposed to, I don't know, like projecting it outwardly. And
Yeah.
something I get when we talk about the emotion of anger is also like the like it's pushing you back into your own power is kind of what I felt with like around anger myself.
Hmm.
It's like, and with other people as well. Like I've even had this with people that I've been working with where I'll say something and I can feel like it triggers the repressed anger beneath the surface. I'm like, that's great. Like really allow yourself to honor that anger instead of like, um, I don't know. It just feels like that's pushing you. That's stopping you from projecting anything onto me. That like I'm, anything special. And it's like take that anger and like feel it and express it and let it move through your body in whatever way it wants. And I found for myself and others that it's like there's a real, I don't know how to put it into other words, but like a claiming back of your own power in a sense in that anger. Like anger is such like a um, protective boundary emotion as well. So it's like,
Yeah. When it's expressed in a,
yeah,
I think the trouble comes when, sometimes, yeah, I mean, honestly, the anger is like literally a whole subject
oh, for
on
sure.
its own for like a whole separate conversation because that subject is just like so layered. Because sometimes when the defenses drop, then the first time the anger comes out, it actually is not in
Yeah,
a healthy way at all,
yeah,
And there's almost like a shift from completely suppressed anger to then like fuck you kind of anger and like I don't care. I've suppressed my anger all my life, so now everybody has to put up with my anger
yeah.
because it's just now finally freed and it doesn't matter that anyone at the receiving end is kind of affected by it, right? So there's layers and layers to it, but yeah, I mean it's absolutely fascinating to me how this anger specifically is just it's just amounts of suppressed anger that was never allowed to come out from like
Yeah.
very early age when it accumulates. I had one massive like rage wave like last week. I was
Oh,
in the
really?
woods, my God, because someone raised their voice and normally I would have like but in a like a very in a way that I don't particularly like and it reminds me of things from like
Mm.
childhood and normally I would go into like scared kind of not
Mm.
scared, you know what I mean, like kind of
That's
like
that's the
it
funny
would
thing with
freak me out.
anger and fear. It's generally it's like there's so
Yeah. It's a kind of free. It's a sort of freeze,
yeah,
flight, fight or flight, or freeze or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And this time, for the first time, I was like, I went for a walk, and I didn't even know that this happened because I was just like walking. I was like talking to someone on the phone, like come off the phone and everything, and all of a sudden, I felt this like wave of this rage coming out, and boy, was I swearing like in my um mother language, I was just not even in English because I don't even think like I even think in English, so I'm just
Yeah.
that's not, but that came out in like with like Polish like worst swear words that exist. I was just like so like swearing like there was no tomorrow.
Can
And
you some
it
Polish
was
words
unbelievable.
with
It
us?
was just so funny. Sorry, say again.
Can you share some Polish swearing with us?
No, I'm not gonna. No, because what if like children are watching and like
But I don't
no.
know what a large percentage of my
But it's
Polish
funny
children.
because to me the I don't I use the word the F word a lot, as you know.
Yeah.
But it does to me it does just doesn't sound like a swear word. To me, it's like I call it like a linguistic enhancer. Um, it, it really is just it's just like you underline something, you want to sort of underline something. So
Putting it in
that's the
bold.
only thing that it does, right? And also it's such a versatile
Oh
word.
yeah, right. It's like
It's like the one of the most versatile. You can express so many things with this one word fuck. It's unbelievable. And
incredible.
whereas in Polish, it's a completely different vibe. The swear words that were coming out, it was like completely different. Was like a proper swearing everything. So yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
that happens. So yeah, we went from this thing. Yeah, we completely diverged from the subject going into anger,
But I like it. It brought a sense of lightness to the subject as
but
well.
actually not really. But actually not really, because to me, speaking of the journey, that's been a huge part of the journey as well, to actually realize the amount of like unexpressed stuff and unexpressed emotions and all sorts of wounds and all sorts of coping mechanisms, of which one would be how to avoid conflict and how to avoid anger and
Yeah.
all sorts of things, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's all a part of it. And I wanted to go back to what you said earlier as well, like around the difference between anger and hatred. And it was funny
Mm-hmm.
for me, like seeing even hatred, like they're different emotions, but even hatred is an energy form and an emotion. It's probably the one we're most like so conditioned as wrong. But there was
Mm-hmm.
something in me exploring that in myself and with others as well. It's like this fear of the energy or the emotion of hatred is also kind of what's keeping it stuck. So I just wanted to make
Totally.
the point that even hatred again is it's a mental conditioning. Again, you don't want to go around um, expressing that to people,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
what
no,
I
and I
meant.
completely get it. But that's also what keeps it kind of hidden as like still a dark part of ourselves because it's like, oh yeah, we kind of, and you see how the conditioning works, or at least this is how it's for me. It's like, okay, I see why I learned to repress that because maybe it was playing out or like we learn that it can play out in unhealthy ways that can harm others. Um, but there's something in when we come to this place in the journey where you can um, hold the space for anything that's arising or like kind of give it the space in a way that
Mm-hmm.
projecting it onto anybody else. Like I'm allowed to feel hatred and like everybody's allowed to feel hatred. The emotion of hatred is allowed to be seen and felt and released, not needing to be projected onto anybody. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
something in that and like seeing everything as an innocent energy form um, that just kind of wants to be seen for what it is. And when we see it clearly, then we stop projecting it out um, unconsciously because we do it unconsciously.
Yeah.
We don't want to see it in ourselves. And this is something that I think you always said really nicely is like, or you've mentioned in one of the chapters in your book, it's like, it's because of the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see. That's why,
Yeah.
or like we get triggered by somebody else, whatever. It's like, oh shit, like and that's what I love. Like the book, I think was so raw and authentic and genuine, and you just like laying it all bare of like this is all the humiliation to myself to see all these pieces of myself. It wasn't like I just keep
Yeah.
becoming this more and more beautiful human being and seeing how amazing I was. You were like writing about the
It
company,
was literally
and
the
it's like oh
opposite.
my
It was,
god, you're like what
yeah.
this is in me and that is in me, and it's like again, there's
Yeah.
something so, and I think that's um one of the main points of the book that I found really important is there's something so uh, vulnerable but liberating in you writing about that for people that read it to be like there's a permission to them that like oh you're allowed to have those parts of yourself as well like because this is the problem it's like if you look at most social spaces human conditioning is like I don't have that, or like the identity system and the self system is like, all to like pretend that we don't have these kind of dark patterns in ourselves. And it's like there's something so um like that breaks that down by speaking about it openly and kind of sharing it vulnerably. Um
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that just, there's bits that I remember, obviously, that I wrote about, but there are bits that I forget that I wrote about.
yeah,
And that was a crucial part of the journey, just the seeing all the quote unquote ugly bits,
yes,
about myself. And it was quite frankly shocking.
yeah. But there's
It was
again,
it was
yeah.
shocking.
And I
But
think
the
it's
whole
something,
point was, this is what I say, it was a very humbling and humiliating
yeah,
experience when the things that I sort of, judged other people without even being aware that I was doing it,
yeah, yeah,
I basically then saw in myself, and it was like one thing after another. It wasn't just one thing.
yeah,
The whole point was that it was like one thing after another, and it literally made me physically sick. Like the number of times I thought I was going to vomit, because it was just like it was just so visceral, just seeing it was almost like I was meeting myself for the first time
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
many ways, but like without the blinkers, without, the stories covering up things and,
Yeah.
and so on. But actually, I'm glad that you mentioned the hatred thing because
Mm.
this was one of the most powerful experiences, actually. One was the self-hatred
Yeah.
that I got to experience. And again, it wasn't like I decided to do that in one day and today would be this, a good day to
Well,
like
it wasn't on your
experience that
calendar. Like
self-hatred.
20 October, you think like 2 weeks in advance. Okay, I'm preparing for my
Yeah, let's
self-hatred day.
schedule, let's schedule, the self-hatred
Yeah.
thingy.
Yeah.
It just came out of the blue. It was just first of all to even realize that how much self-hatred I heard in carried in the first place, that I was shocked. So that I didn't like myself,
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah.
That there was so much self-hatred, I did not. So when it came out, it was shocking.
Yeah.
And when you know, allowing myself to, I can't even really speak of allowing myself because there was no choice at this point. It was just
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. It was like it was
Yeah, but
it
like,
was just
yeah.
amazing to let myself
Yeah.
actually feel that self-hatred in that moment. But also, and this is the bit that I'm primarily saying that I'm glad that you mentioned, because one of the experiences that came through, it was literally like anything that I didn't allow myself to feel before, or I judged as wrong, or
Yeah.
I'm a bad person if I feel this, and so on. All of this was coming up to the surface for like months,
Yeah.
okay? Months every day. And one of those things was that I literally felt hatred toward some members of my family.
Right. Right.
And I didn't even realize that I, A, carried it,
Yes.
and B, that I never allow myself to feel it because subconsciously I thought this made me a really bad
This is
person
fear of
because
that.
I had those feelings. And so this was so incredible. And it's exactly like you said, that hatred alone, if it's there,
Yeah.
it's meant to be experienced. And if and it only gets stuck, and it only becomes an issue when it's not allowed. And
Right.
so, and the fact that we don't, we are sort of wired in such a way that we cannot. For me, that was, I think, a big thing that I just realized, like, wow, I can totally love, say, my parents, and I can hate them at the same
Yeah.
time, and that one and the other is not excluded. And of course, for most people, even if I heard my say this few years ago, I'll be like, how can you say this? Like, this is horrible. It's like, how can you say this? But actually, that hatred was not even current. The
Yeah.
hatred
Well, that's
was
it. It's always
an
it's real.
echo of moments when, quite frankly, that hatred was totally
Yeah.
freaking justified, almost,
Exactly.
to when I was a kid growing
Yeah.
up, in particular situations, but never allowed to be felt. And so it was finally experienced. And so that alone, and like you said, it's like what it literally everything that's allowed to be just experienced without the narrative about it, the judgment around it. And even if the judgment comes up,
Even if
then
that's
you
there,
want,
that's
then
okay
you
as
allow
well.
that,
Yeah.
then it just transmutes. It's literally like a alchemical process,
Yeah.
it's like a literally alchemical physical process. It transmutes, and whatever had hold on, it just sort of
Yeah.
opens up and dissipates. So, I know it doesn't sound like fun, but when you sort of hear about it, but I highly recommend.
Yeah. You get to the point where it's like you don't have a choice, like you said. Like I've had the same,
And
but
there comes a point. I really, the whole thing from chapter, if you anyone gets it, gets the book, but like from the emotional breakdown, which I call the surrender, right up till the end of the book, there was no like choosing anything. There was just stuff was just happening whether I liked it or not, you know?
Like we had no hands on
Yeah.
the steering wheel anymore.
Yeah, no, no. Trying maybe, although
Yeah, yeah.
hardly. Yeah, hardly at that point, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that. Like, yeah, for me, it just comes back to the pure innocence of everything, right? The innocence of the hatred itself. Like, as you said, like
Hmm.
I was speaking to somebody about this a while ago, and I was like, if you really see this like child that can't control its circumstances around it, and maybe things are happening to it, and that's when it turns into hatred, is where it's like, and it's like I
Big
hate
time. Yeah.
myself because I'm so small and in like and not powerful. Like this lady explained it to me in this way, and I was like, "Fuck, you're on the money with it." Like I really understood
Mm.
a child's like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old self that just it's like you hate yourself because you're like, look, you're like this little body that can't get what you want or can't like change your caregivers or and you hate them for like bringing you into the world and you can't do this and like just really
And you hate yourself because you think it's your fault as well,
yes,
very
exactly. And then you internalize it
often.
as
There's,
well,
yeah,
that hatred of like
yeah,
this is because
yeah,
I can't control it. So this is it goes on to you. And yeah, the innocence in that, like that's what's so key, is like we become so afraid of the hatred, but it's like, oh shit,
yeah,
it's such an innocent little emotion. And of course I'm allowed to hate myself, and of course I'm allowed to hate people. Of course I'm allowed to feel that and kind of express that in my own space. And and of course, that doesn't mean this is where the mind gets caught in fixations. It's like it's not black and reality is not black and white, right? Like you can hate someone and love somebody, and it's actually more the love is actually way more authentic than like I've seen this in my own personal relationships. Like when I integrated that side of things, like when I stopped bullshitting myself, that I'm like, oh no, I only love them. I would never hate them, but like integrated that side of
yeah,
things,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
way
I would
more
never do
authentic.
that. I would, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my God, that I would never. Like I was slapped in my face like countless times,
Yeah, yeah,
every
like I would never
I
do
didn't even know I had these stories. Like, I would never say this, and I would never do this, and I would never lie, and I would never, whatever. Oh my God. And it was like coming right
that.
at me, like, boom, no, you've done it. You've done it here, and you've done it there, and you've done it, and you're still doing it. And it's like, it was
Yeah,
just
I
unbelievable.
love the way you wrote about that in the book. Where you just like every time it was like reality was just like fucking with you. Like every time you would have this thing, oh
Yeah.
that no, not me. And then like I can't remember how you wrote about it, but just after that, like it would all the memories would come to the surface. Oh, you playing out that exact thing in your own life. And it's like, yeah, I just love the
So, in a way, it's like sometimes when people say, um, I sat with this and I looked and I tried to like process. I sometimes don't even know what that means
right, yeah.
because there was none of like everything was just
It's
happening
just
on
yeah,
its like
yeah,
I was just basically I was just sitting and it was almost like I was forced
yeah,
to confront things without anyone asking me whether I was ready for it or
yeah,
whether I even
yeah.
wanted to do it. I mean, it literally felt like I think the way I said it in the book was like life was intent on like annihilating
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
because it really felt like that. And I genuinely mean it when I say that like I was brought right down on my knees,
yeah,
by this process because it was there was literally at the end and like the most intense bit lasted for 2 months
yeah,
nonstop.
yeah,
Okay. There really was nothing left in me where I felt any better or different from anyone else.
yeah,
There's just
yeah,
nothing, you
yeah.
know?
And
Um,
that like that's where I compare this to like Ajishanti is the end of your world, because for me, like that kind of a um open, like authentic, genuine expression of how the awakening played out for you. And that's what I read in Ajishanti's book as well. It's like this, and actually I remember you talking about it on one of your podcasts where you guys were discussing the book. And that
mhm.
like level of being brought to your knees, like being crucified by life. And like I think this is something in like in really because I'd known you for ages, but until I read the book, like they like and it's the same with me. Like when I'm talking with people, like sharing or helping people on their own paths, I'll just meet them in
Mm-hmm.
what they're going through, because you have the capacity for it once you've integrated in yourself. Like you can meet anybody in anything. But there's also like,
Yeah.
you don't realize, like I've gotten this from people like, oh, they're like, oh, they didn't realize that I'd sat in that exact same self-hatred and the kind of
My God. Yeah.
needs.
Yeah.
And there was something about you just like unpacking it so much in your book that it's so liberating to like relate to it as someone having been through it and kind of going through those dark night phases where I was like, oh yeah, we've been through the exact same thing, where it's just this like brought to your knees. Like, yeah, I've had the same where life's just like bam, annihilation, annihilation, annihilation.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and just us talking openly about this on the podcast, I think it's great for like anybody that's in that to know like it is a part of the process, and it doesn't last forever either. It might come in waves, it might last
And
long.
it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you or
Exactly.
you're doing the awakening wrong way
Yeah.
or whatever, because if there's anything that I realized, unfortunately, after I've gone through all those things, not before, that there is literally, I don't know one person, okay? I don't know one person now who's been on this journey that has not gone through their own version
Exactly.
of just some sort of a nightmare,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. And for some people, it's in one go, For some people, it can be years. For some people, it can be months. The level of intensity will be different. So I also don't want to say that, like, I also don't want to like imply that this has to be a rule because you never know. Like I
It
said,
definitely
everybody's
is.
journey is a mystery.
Yeah, there is kind of, it's interesting. Like some people don't have it in the same level of intensity for sure, but there is.
Right? The intensity may be different, right? Some people, the energetic, for example, side may be very subtle, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's just
Yeah.
happening for me, for whatever reason, everything has to be like on steroids, at least like for the time being when it sort of happens.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if I really still like, I still don't know why this book came out. Um, but I do know that if, like you said, like if it helps humanize awakening a little bit more and make people realize that they're really not alone in this,
Yeah.
and that there's lots of people that are going through the same stuff, whether you call it awakening or not,
Yeah.
okay? It doesn't matter,
You may,
then that's great, you
yeah.
know?
You may not know why the book is written, but I do. In the sense in the sense of like having read it and having had conversations with people where I'm like, I have the perfect book for you. And I'm like, that's why the book was written, because there was like a gap in and life again, like this is the whole cool thing of how life works when we just surrender to it, right? It's like what's needed
Yeah.
comes through the people who are open to kind of channel it or whatever, just give themselves to what life wants to move through us. And yeah, I've met, and I mentioned this earlier, but like maybe to close it off, is like I really, you know, it's cool, like because I've often had specific books to recommend to people in specific stages of the journey, and it's like for me that your book
Mm-hmm.
hits a certain and like you said, it can be helpful for everyone, but there's just been so many instances where I'm like, yes, there's a book now to like address the fixation of like this shouldn't be happening in
This
life.
or yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, and because it's written in not a way about anybody else, it's about yourself. So it also takes away any of the defensiveness of the ego or the mental system. Like I don't have that in me, because you're not telling anybody anything. You're just saying this was how my awakening journey played out. And in that, I think is actually something so powerful, because it's like it opens up the space for people to be like, oh shit, like I can acknowledge those parts of myself as well, because you're not writing it
Yeah.
in like
Oh,
a
that's great.
prescription, yeah, of like, if you go through awakening, you should integrate your self-hatred. You should see all the parts of yourself that you're not seeing. It's not like that. It's just like, hey, this is how my awakening went. Take from it what you will. And just in that manner, I feel like it's very like give space to people. So I think it hasn't been
I'm
spoken
really curious
about.
because the book it's just came out, so I'm
Yeah,
totally, I'd rather listen to people talk about what they heard for themselves in the book than talk about the actual book. For
yeah,
me, I'd
yeah.
rather do that. So I haven't had I've had obviously some reviews and some endorsements and feedback, but the book is just still fresh and
Mm.
um making rounds. But I just love hearing how different people hear
Right. Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
things for
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And honestly, every time, I mean, there were across the board, everybody was like talking about it being honest and, um, sort of real, or, there's certain commonalities, but everyone points also to something different that it
Yeah.
like did for them. And like the newest, the freshest one was my partner gave it to his client to read. And he came back and he's like, "Oh my God, she doesn't tell people what to do."
Yeah. Well, that's exactly
Like for
it, right?
him,
That's
this was
exactly
like,
it.
and I'm sitting there like, what? And
Yeah.
for him, this was like massive. For
Yeah.
him, for whatever reason, it was massive. Like, she doesn't tell me what to do. She doesn't tell
But
people what to
that's
do. I
exactly.
would have thought that would be like a bad, because sometimes people will be like, well, you didn't give me the step by step and you didn't
Right,
give me
right.
the whatever. So I would have thought, so when he first said it, I thought, in a good way or in a bad way, because kind of like I
Yeah,
wasn't sure what he meant by it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
then he said no, for him it was in a good way. So I still wait for this to be unpacked, because we haven't finished the conversation. But yeah, turns
Well,
out that
I can
for
get
some people
that
that's a good. you
completely. Yeah.
you do
Yeah,
what?
that's kind of the point
Explain.
that I was just making. Like I think I hate being fucking told what to do.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, right,
It's
welcome to the
fun. No,
club.
it's funny. It's
Yeah.
actually one of the things that came up with like a friend. We were reflecting some stuff back to each other, and I was just like, yeah, like if someone tells me what to do, I want to do the opposite, right? Where and
Mm-hmm,
a lot of
mm-hmm.
minds are like that. Again, we all have our own kind of peculiarities to us, but I think that's what, and I can probably resonate with what this guy is saying. I was like, again, there's something that's so inviting because it doesn't put the mind into defensive mode, right? If it's being told like, this is how to live your life, and it's like there's so much of that shit.
Right,
It's fucking exhausting. Where it's
right.
literally, it's like, no, I don't care. You do whatever you want. And I'm the same. Like, I love sharing that with people. It's like, this awaken, do whatever you want, right? This is what I'm sharing. This is
Yeah,
the mission that I have. And take it. If you hate it,
yeah.
it's it. And just in the book, it's just, um, I just feel like it gives, because again, the whole journey is about coming back to yourself, and not going anywhere else to find it. And I feel
Yeah,
writing it in that way
nicely
invites
put.
people to
Mm.
open up in themselves, right? It's like, this is what you went through, and then you're opening up. And this is the thing with vulnerability. Like, I feel like when any one person is vulnerable about what they've been through or what they've been going through, it invites the same thing in the other person, but it's not being pressure.
Immediately connect, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You can connect, and it invites you to open up in yourself. But it's not like you saying like you should be vulnerable. It's kind of more, it's an invitation. That's what it feels like. It's more like an invitation rather than a prescription or like a way that it should be done, which
and
um
I think that this is
I
the
like.
why we like the Adyashanti's book, The End of Your World. At least for me, that
Same,
was the
same,
thing, because
same vibe.
especially
Yeah,
that coming from a teacher,
exactly.
that was even more kind of powerful, I thought, for me, because you close the gap.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
teacher closes by sharing this humanness, by sharing these issues and telling me, okay, yeah, I am this teacher, known and have all these
Yeah,
students and been on opera and like, whatever.
yeah,
And there's like this whole other
yeah,
thing that I've been through, and let me tell you, and that's also normal. And I'm telling you, I may not remember exactly the details about the book anymore,
mm,
but I remember how was left feeling after reading it. And to me, he closed the hierarchy collapsed,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the gap between, the
That's
enlightened
exactly the
teacher and the
same vibe.
student that's
Yeah,
below, it just collapsed.
yeah,
It just collapsed in the most beautiful way, where you still respect him, obviously,
yeah,
still very much look up to him and respect him as a teacher and a human being, but that kind of hierarchy that I can't
Yeah.
stand, and
Yeah.
that kind of gap, that like the pedestal thing,
Yeah.
he did such a genuinely brilliant job, even though I know that it probably wasn't like the goal of the book, but
Yeah.
just by virtue of sharing this story and his humanness
Yeah.
with us, the gap collapsed, and it's just freaking great,
That's
so
exactly
I
what.
also recommend The End of Your World by
Yeah.
Adi
Yeah.
Shanti,
For
by the
sure.
way.
For sure.
Yeah,
But I think that's
yeah.
exactly, you hit on the point that like why. Because again, you wrote the book, so you don't see it from like an external perspective the way I do, of like seeing you someone who I know you're very deeply realized and had all these conversations and like these deep shifts. So it was kind of a similar thing in the sense of like I read Ajashanti's book and it was like, here's someone that I know is very deeply realized and has had all these shifts. And then kind of again, like you said, bridging and closing the gap between that and just being a human. And then I got the same from your book. And obviously, you wouldn't have seen it that way because you're just writing it from your perspective. But for me, it was the same thing. Like, that's, I think, why I compared the two, where it was like, again,
That's
another
amazing. If you
deeply
did that,
realized
that's great.
person was just like, oh, fuck, poof, pedestal gone, human. And it's an invitation mode for everyone. So I think that's why I compared them. Um,
Well, that's just lovely to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, amazing. And it's actually, it's funny, it brings to mind, I just saw today on Frank's Instagram, he was kind of talking about Chogyam Trungpa. I don't know if you know him, he was like in Tibet.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Mm-hmm.
was like,
I literally have two of his books in front of
oh,
me
like the crazy
to
wisdom. Yeah, yeah,
show
yeah. And he
that.
was saying how he was doing the same thing of like bridging to kind of all like through, again, whether um everything was ethical or not. Like I've had some people get really triggered by it, but
Yeah.
I'm just sharing
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Frank was saying, and I actually really agreed with
I know what he
the
means
perspective.
though. Yeah, I know what he
Yeah,
means though.
of that
Yeah, yeah.
perspective of again, like someone that smokes and drinks and whatever, and being like, oh yeah, it's still available to me as well. Of course, there's a whole nother discussion on morals and ethics, but it felt similar in the
Which
sense.
should not be excluded, by the way.
Yes, no,
Should not be
exactly.
excluded.
But
It should not be excluded.
but there was just a point on
You
that,
know what I mean,
like
though. You know what I mean, though. Yeah.
humanizing of it, like in that, like
Yeah.
being still has sex and desires and all these kind of things. And again, obviously,
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously talk about the ethical and everything, but it doesn't change the fact that here was another person who was, realized or whatever, and
yeah,
great teacher, and many people benefited from his teachings, and at the same time there was this other stuff going on, right?
yeah,
And we can't kind of compute that the two things can coexist,
yeah.
again, primarily because of that kind of manufactured ideal that, which is why I was
But
telling you, I think in one of our conversations, that like, because I came out of that process and then started learning about things.
yeah,
So when I heard that some teacher, there, Kyle, there's not one teacher, even existing teacher, modern teachers, okay, it would not surprise me if something come out about any teacher that's currently
well,
teaching.
yeah, no.
It would not surprise me, and I don't mean it like,
Wait till my shit comes
what I
out.
mean by this is like they're still human, okay?
Look,
They're still
I
human, and
completely agree.
therefore it doesn't surprise me, okay? So some people like, and I see it, the only reason why I see it that way now is because I came out of that process, went to the fucking underworld, seen my own oh, shadow and all sorts of things. And, out of that, you cannot help but understand and
Exactly.
also have compassion, which should not be equated with like tolerating or putting up with anything,
Mm.
or zero boundaries. But all of a sudden, you're just seeing, like, of course, like if you
Yeah.
have not seen this, if you had suppressed, if you had not done any shadow work, you can be as deeply realized as you want, but that stuff is gonna still play out,
Yeah.
and it's gonna come out one way or another, and unfortunately, sometimes with real cost to people, and obviously there's complexities to do with that, but the point is that people are like shocked, how can an enlightened person, how can this,
But yeah,
whatever, and I come from like And why not?
But
Know, still human,
that's exactly
still human.
the point
Okay.
of making. Is it's like
Yeah.
it is a bridge in itself. Again, that like no matter the depth of realization, the flawed, and even like there's nothing wrong with the flawedness of the human as well. Like I feel like that's the I don't know what I get from it is this again this kind of um like in the human realm, of course, there's whatever and all of that kind of stuff, but there's just this kind of acknowledgement that at whatever stage, everyone is still human. And again, I just saw like on Frank's Instagram, they were talking about this, but in certain things, and it just really, I was like, I've had the exact same thoughts myself of like, no one's ever gone and live like the only reason we would think, and this is what we were talking about earlier, like the Buddha or Jesus or all these enlightened masters of the past, like we just no one was living with them 24/7 and saw like how they reacted in the kitchen if they like something went wrong or whatever, like kind of all these um again the human side of things, these especially
Yep.
when we're talking about people from like thousands of years ago, like no one's going to
Oh
have
my God.
documenting
Yeah.
those kind of some things in the
Yeah.
scriptures and all of that. So I think just what I love is like expressions of this that completely um it's like in the Hindu tradition they have like these two deities. I'm gonna get their wrong name. It's like Shiva and Krishna, I think. And I was reading something about it the other day where it's like Shiva's like the silent, kind of, you know, let's go of the world and all of that, and Krishna was like this being that kind of saw through the illusion and then went and danced in the illusion in like a chaotic, like trickster archetype, Joker kind of
Yeah.
way to show everybody the freedom that is in all of that. So like that's kind of what I get a little bit from Trungpa's kind of archetype, was this kind of like
But
again
also,
there's the moral side as well, but like just the um I don't know, the breaking down of ideas of how it should be, and maybe that didn't play out in healthy ways, but like I was just wanting to talk about that side of it. Yeah,
and there is a big teaching in that ideal collapsing
yeah,
for
exactly,
people,
exactly.
and
That's
so
the
when that
point I'm
stuff
trying to
comes
make.
out, that is a teaching in and of itself.
Exactly, the kind of
And right, and also again, I do recognize completely that the way it happens, is not always, pleasant or healthy or
right.
whatever, but there's like always a deeper
That's that, and I think
teaching
yeah,
there
that's
that's
the point.
happening at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah,
And also I would say uh that how you talk about the more human the teacher, and they sort of show their humanness, don't hide
yeah,
their
yeah.
humanness, right? Like, yeah. uh, so like that to you is like an indicator of like the more they don't hide it, the more they show it and express it, whatever, the more enlightened.
Mm.
To me it also is that same person is not never going to assume that they are free from anything,
Yes, yeah,
and
exactly.
that they are that something is not,
Yes, that's
because once
yeah,
you've
yeah, yeah,
seen the
exactly.
depths of
Exactly.
unconscious and how it works and how we can BS ourselves endlessly,
Yeah,
then you'll for as long as you're human,
yeah,
you're not going to assume that you're done in any way with this stuff,
exactly.
and you're definitely not going to project a
Yeah,
persona that's done with this stuff,
and that's
okay?
yeah, and
um, and
you
you're
put it
probably
really
gonna
nicely.
make it like one of your not a mission, but like you want to kind of at least remind
Yeah,
students or people every
yeah,
once in a while that, like, just to
yeah,
remind you. Yeah. Like, that's a so to me that like goes hand in hand. And actually,
yeah.
on a similar note, oh, I wish I remembered her name. I don't think it was Chogan Trungpa, but I think it was a different teacher, but also one of those up there.
Mm, mm.
There's an interview on New Thinking Aloud with this lady. She's beautiful. Um, she may be in her 60s, maybe even 70s. I don't know. but she lived with the teacher, with a very famous teacher, and like in his like ashram or whatever, and like with other women, and there was like all sorts of sexual. She was
Right.
in a relationship with him, and there was lots of like sexual stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that interview. I can't tell you the details because I watched it so long ago, but I watched with like a kid. It was like, give me popcorn and like, I was like, oh my God, because not oh my God for me, because again, I was at the point when I watched this, I was not surprised at all to hear any of the things that she was sharing. I was more, oh my God, like I was just imagine how triggering
Right.
this interview would have been for people who, for example, had this teacher,
Right. Right. Yeah.
like on a pedestal, like this also morally
Mm.
pure, perfect, whatever. And then it turns out that he wasn't.
Yeah.
And, but how her own awakening
Mm.
has happened through this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, again,
Like,
another byproduct of this journey for me was just seeing like really the mystery of everybody's unfolding and how we end up in situations that we end up that on the surface look like a really bad idea or
yeah.
morally not okay or ethically and so on, but like underneath it's quite literally something that is part actually of the journey of awakening, even though the process is
Yeah.
horrible,
Yeah.
once you going through it. And again, people want to just go black and white. It's like, but it's not okay, okay. But
But
I'm not
real,
discussing that it's okay, it's not okay. I'm discussing that there's way more underneath that's
yeah.
actually going on. And when we see that, it's a massive
Yeah.
it's a massive lesson, it's a massive experience that was needed for things to be dismantled and
Yeah.
collapse and whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do for sure. I completely agree.
Yeah.
The mind wants
Yeah.
reality isn't black and white. It's just like
Exactly, exactly. But the mind needs things. The mind,
yeah.
and I
Well, the
think that
mind
this is
thinks
the trouble that
it needs things to be black and white because it thinks it needs
yeah,
that
and
reality to live in it, but it's like it's all functioning completely on its own without it's that fundamental belief in the need to know to be able to exist. Like that knowing is fundamental.
exactly. And this is why this journey is can get so painful,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
because the mind needs to have it's like this or it's like that or whatever. And it's like the idea that, I can be I can be a really generous person and I can be totally selfish at the same time,
yeah,
that I can be very truthful and I can also lie, that I can be, totally joyful and genuinely like upbeat and depressed at
yeah,
the same time. And so, do you know what I mean? Like, the mind has such trouble. Like, we were conditioned to thinking like this is also a problem, or it
yeah,
shouldn't be that way. That when that recognition starts to kick in, that that's in fact true,
yeah,
then this is where the crisis hits, and and it it's the tough that's when we plunge into all sorts of dark nights and
yeah.
you know
And it's yeah,
yeah,
and it's
we could
not
talk about it for hours.
yeah, 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 no, exactly. Um, but it's like nothing, yeah, it's just it's a bad thing for the identity is all it is, right? Like the um like seeing all of
Yeah.
that. So it's all already the case, it's all already reality. Like reality is what it is.
And actually, for those people who, because I can see how then it's easy also to go, yeah, but, and like, what about morality and what about, whatever. And I'm not even saying that those are not valid questions, but actually, ironically, when those things collapse,
It
and when
happens
you've
naturally.
seen through your own, yeah, when you've seen through your own dark side, so to
Yeah,
speak, and it's been brought to light and it's not being pushed away, there's not only like like a compassion is no longer like, oh, I need to be compassionate.
It's
Compassion is a
more
natural
real. Yeah, yeah,
byproduct.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a natural byproduct of this process because now that you see yourself that way, you can start seeing people that same way, you know,
Exactly.
and you see the innocence
Your
of it
innocence.
all, and it
Yeah.
immediately. So again, it doesn't mean that like if someone I can see an innocence and understand somebody's appalling behavior, and I can say absolutely no to that.
Yeah. And it
So
happens
again,
naturally.
it's not
And
excluded,
yeah.
and
And
it
it's like
happens naturally,
it's like
right?
that's the thing. The mind doesn't get it. Like, and I know exactly what you're
Right.
talking about. And I actually remember this coming up when I was part of John Aston's science and somebody asking this around morality. And I could understand the perspective where the mind was coming from, but it was like, there was also knowing in
Yeah.
myself and kind of what we're both sharing here. It's like that takes care of itself when you're just acting from this kind of place that's
Yeah.
not inauthentic, right? Because even that, like, then we're distorting, like, morality is being distorted by belief systems and like it's going up into the head. And then there's all these distortions of what is compassion, what is this. But when you're just living from this kind of I don't know what the word would be, but this like kind of openness where you're not trying to project anything and you're not trying to hide anything,
Mm-hmm.
then like you said, it functions naturally. It's like you can both have compassion for someone and you can like not want to be in that environment. And but it doesn't feel complicated. Like that's what the mind doesn't get, right? Where it's like it can sound like a complex
Mm-hmm.
situation where it's like I can be compassionate to someone as well and maybe have to say something to address what they're doing because that just feels
Mm-hmm.
what I have to do in the moment. It's really just a trusting of that, like I know what I need to do in every single moment, and just trusting that is kind of
Exactly. And I also and when someone brings morality into it, especially, in the context of like talking about no doer and things like that, it's again, it's literally the opposite.
yeah,
It's not lack of morality at all,
yeah,
and it's just that I always encourage people to actually question and see how morality functions in a society, because believe me, there are people who are killing other people, who are racist toward other people in the name of some noble
yeah,
values.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So there is morality that is completely institutionalized, that is completely discriminatory toward certain groups.
yeah,
Okay. And the morality that I'm talking about, which is also a byproduct of this journey,
yeah, exactly,
it includes everybody. Okay.
yeah,
That morality is not when I feel like it.
yeah,
That
yeah,
morality is not only reserved to certain people.
yeah,
It's a completely different.
yeah. I mean,
Morality is not even a good word.
no,
Morality is
because
not a
that's
good
the thing.
word precisely because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's the same thing as when we start talking about morality. That was exactly the same thought that came to mind for me. It's like morality is a socially agreed upon thing, and that could be completely like again, like maybe we like some cultures have come up with great systems, and we could probably have a whole conversation on the topic.
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah.
But I
I'm
agree with
glad
you
I
that
didn't go.
having
I nearly got into this in the book on the chapter of no doer, and I
wow,
actually went there
I
in
really
the first draft. I went into the whole morality thing, and I was fucking raging. You know what I mean? I was like, "You're telling me about no morality. Let me tell you about morality." In this institution and in that church and in the hypocrisy in the church that I even grew up with. I don't even have to look at, um, you know, other institutions or religions or churches. I can just stick to the one I grew up in,
yeah.
and the
And you can
hypocrisy
see it.
of the fear mongering, the teaching about morality, while the very people who preached it did the most immoral things
Yeah,
by their definition, only worse because like in the
yeah.
like
Not seeing it.
behind the scenes, so to
Yeah.
speak, right?
But that's the
So
thing with morality is and that's why like I love what you said earlier because what we're saying about an enlightened being and like for me like someone who's so acknowledging of the fact that anything can happen through them and like not like because that's what morality, like people that are teaching morality and all of this are putting themselves almost like up on a bit of a self-righteousness thing and saying,
Yeah.
like I am self like even I don't know where I was listening to it. I think there's something on YouTube about talking about the law system. It was in a book about like the law system as well of like judging somebody again
Mm.
of like they're a bad person. I would never have done that. Like this, like whole, and it's like for me, the most enlightened perspective is I could be doing unconscious shit to people all the time. Like I'm not, it's not my intention, but in my groups and in my containers, but that's the kind of more like, um, when you don't like keep shit filtered in your background, where it's like I would never be doing anything unconsciously to anybody, and if someone points that out, then
Yeah.
get all defensive of like, oh my god, are you suggesting I'm immoral? Like, how dare
Yeah.
they? Um,
That's why I said forget about immoral. Like if
yeah,
I told you the story when my boyfriend at the age of I was 25 or whatever, and he called me that I was like the most generous and the most selfish person
yeah,
he's ever known. And I was like appalled. I was
right,
insulted to my core. How could he possibly think that I was a selfish person? But obviously, when I look back, I was totally selfish, totally selfish. He was totally right. And that's the thing that it's like anything that the excluding of anything, and this is why I said that this process of like what I call the darkest night in the book was so humiliating,
yeah.
and humbling because in the
And
end I got to the point where not only I wasn't like my self-righteousness was annihilated completely. There was literally nothing. There was nothing I could hold on to. Not because I've done the most horrible things or anything like that, but because I realized that had it not had I been, raised in different circumstances
yeah,
with different people, give me different environment, give me different parents, give me whatever, and I just knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had the potential to do anything and be anyone
yeah,
had
exactly.
those circumstances been different. And that in of itself was you know me, like humility, and I just like I definitely don't come across as like a humble person. Um, but this was those two are the most what I see as the most humbling moments was seeing that,
Yeah, yeah,
and therefore my self-righteousness was annihilated.
yeah,
And also like recognizing that I absolutely know fuck all about other people's journey.
yeah,
That other people, whatever they're doing, even the things that look to me like this is a really bad idea or you
mm,
shouldn't be doing this or like whatever. Doesn't matter if it comes from like good intentions and even wanting to prevent someone from
yeah,
getting into some kind of trouble,
mm,
stuff has to play out. And there is, and we don't have to look at other people, we just have to look at ourselves
yeah,
to see how many times we've been in situations where people closest to us be like, don't,
yeah, yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
you're gonna regret it, or like, this is gonna be really bad. Or we went into situations which deep down we knew
yeah,
that were really bad for us or that were just really terrible idea, but we stayed. And then once we've gone out of it, we look in retrospect and it's like, oh shit, like I can see now why
right, that's happened. Yeah,
that happened, right? And
yeah,
so this is what I mean. This was the most humbling thing that sure I can share things. Sure, if someone asks me for some kind of advice or input or whatever, I'm more than happy to share it. But ultimately, you're stripped of the kind of I can't say that I'm not judging people. I would never say that because I think that I'm judging people all the time. It's just that I'm maybe not aware. Like I walk someone will pass by and be like, "What the hell is she wearing today?" Like, for example, like, "What is this hair?" or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
Um, Whatever. I don't know. Like, I'm just giving an example that it's probably happening anyway. I'm just kind of not aware. So I'm not talking about that kind of judgment I think happens all the time, whether we're aware of not. I'm talking about the kind of judgment which comes from this belief that I'm inherently different or better from
Yeah.
someone, or that I even have the idea that I can know anything about this one person's situation and trajectory or why they're in it and for what reason, because I know better, I have better ideas or some for them, oh my God, like the
Yeah.
collapsing of that.
Yeah.
And I talk about it in the book. It really felt, and I think Adia Shanti also talks about that. And I remember being really moved by that when I first, I don't know if it's in the book or in his videos, where, it's all of a sudden in this moment, it's like the world and the people in it stop being held hostage
Yeah. Yeah.
by
Yeah. I
your
love that.
ideas
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
of what they should be,
Yeah.
how they should be living, what they
Yeah, I
should
think
not be doing, and so on,
what he said, and I loved it as well because I think I remember that specific quote, or maybe it's a slightly different one, but it's along the same lines. And what I got, what I remember of it was like you also like of like not trying to filter yourself, or like trying to like care what other people think of you. Then you also give the
Hmm.
world and everybody else the freedom to think. So this is maybe a slightly different topic, but it came to mind when you said that of like everybody
No,
else,
no, go ahead.
yeah, everyone else, there's no longer hold hostage of you trying to control their perception of you either, where it's like giving,
Oh yeah, I mean that's like
yeah,
another that is another subject, but
yeah, but
yeah,
I think it
massive.
was like, I think that
Yeah.
quote just reminded me
It's
of that quote.
connected. It's
Yeah,
connected for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But I
Yeah,
just
that
wanted
one
to,
is fucking exhausting, that one. Yeah.
exactly. It's just there's so much freedom in it though for everyone because it's like people feel the
Right?
freedom themselves as well when you're not trying to control. Like I'm just like you can, because my family, I'm like you can think I'm fucking crazy. That's okay.
That's okay, right? That's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a freedom in that as opposed to when you're trying to put on like a, I want you to see me this way, and then the other person can actually feel that and like the filtering and the subtle manipulation and all of that.
Yeah,
So
I even get, I even completely understand like someone wrote a comment somewhere. I think it was mine and Vivi's conversation. I think it was about no door or something. I don't actually remember, but
mm,
someone wrote in the comments like, "Oh, this is like mental illness," and like they're both sitting there talking about their mental illnesses or something. And and I was like, I get it.
yeah, yeah,
I get
exactly.
it why you would say
Yeah,
that because honestly, few
exactly.
years before, if someone talked to me about no doer or no personal agency or like
Yeah,
whatever, I'd be like, mate,
yeah,
I think you have a little problem here of
yeah,
disassociation of some sort, or like, something. Or like if I was in a different mood, I would be like, this is fucking crazy, It's like
yeah,
this person's definitely lost it,
yeah.
something like that. So I completely understand that. What I'm absolutely not willing to put up with is when someone is disrespectful to my guests. Okay.
Right, right, right.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can understand why you're saying this.
yeah.
I can totally understand why you see it that way.
Yeah,
And it's not okay to be disrespectful that way
yeah, exactly.
towards,
It is.
even if it,
Mm,
so do you see what I mean? Just because I don't take it personally and I understand that
yeah,
doesn't mean it makes it okay. And
yeah.
then so I reported the
But that's
guy
it,
to
and it's kind of what we're
YouTube,
talking.
and that was it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about earlier, where it's like you can have the natural compassion and you can still respond to it completely authentically. Like I'm the same, where I'm like, if someone's just also just like this is funny about the internet space, someone could just come on and be blatantly rude, right? Just like lashing out at me, at the people like
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
space. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
again, I could have it like I can read the comment and I can actually feel exactly what's going on. It's like, okay, something in here triggered like an identity in this person, and that identity is
Yeah.
trying to defend itself by lashing out. Because if it can prove that everybody else is completely crazy, then that doesn't mean anything has to be looked at here. So there's a complete understanding of where it's coming from. At the same time, I'll like block the post because they'll go and comment on like every single one of my videos saying like the same thing. And I'm just like, I understand where you're at, but at the same time, I don't feel like those comments need to be seen publicly. So I'll go and kind of, mute them. And it's the
Yeah.
same kind of thing where it's like you can understand where it's coming from, but there can also be this kind of boundary of like and this is what's interesting about the internet because it's like a public space, but there's also like it's like kind of. But anyway,
Yeah.
the point is just like that's all
You
incorporated.
know, I don't even, I think I don't even, not that I have a problem with the word boundaries or anything, but it's almost like it comes so naturally that it's like I don't even
Yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
of it as boundaries
No,
anymore.
same,
It's almost like
same. Yeah.
it's just that comes out of like natural because I gave an example. I had a recording recently with this really amazing woman. Her name is Tara.
I actually hate the word boundary.
And
So I'm glad you make that point.
okay, good. Um, um, yeah, no, I'm okay one way or another, but I'm just saying that I remember listening to a conversation about boundaries, and that's when I realized like, oh, like I don't even think
Mm.
about it in those terms, as in like, oh, I have boundaries about this, and I have boundaries in those situations
Yeah, it's
because
not meant
it
to be.
changes all the time. Because it might be that someone, let's say, comes across as like a bit of an asshole in the comments, right? But let's say I just have like nothing else going on and I'm kind of like
Right, right, right.
whatever, I feel whatever about it and I might even want to engage with him and
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, well what's up?
yeah,
Like what's up?
yeah,
Like why you're saying this? Like let me try to understand why you're saying this thing or something like
Well, I
that.
mean, I'll
And
even
so
have where I'll sometimes like again, I'll sometimes try to point something out to them, or I'll like depending on the mood, like you said, it's all conditions based. But if someone's just
yeah.
purely trolling, where they're just like, I'm just like being completely inauthentic, then I'll
Yeah,
kind
if someone is totally this yeah,
yeah, but
if
I'll sometimes
or some
engage in that as well. Like that's what I'm saying. Like if I'm in like like be like fucking around kind of
you
mood,
mean you're an asshole back?
not an
You're
asshole
an
back, but
asshole back?
I'll just kind of like meet them in the trolling plane. Where it's like even um yeah, just kind of giving like a completely um like ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer kind of thing. But it's
If 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 they come across if they come with an asshole-ish attitude in a particular day in my cycle, I can definitely do the asshole back.
yeah, yeah.
I have that potential.
Right. Yeah, well there we go. Right. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Kyle,
yeah.
I have to go.
Okay, let's wrap that up. Thank you. If anybody wants to explore what we were just talking about, then I'll put the link to Maggie's book on Amazon and Maggie's website where you can work with her in one-on-ones and astrology sessions. And you can learn how to be okay with being an asshole and
In a nutshell, gosh, all this deep conversation, and here this is what you're giving me.
this is
Maybe that should have been the title of the book, How to Be
yeah.
Okay with Being an Asshole
Actually,
or
that I
something.
think that would have been fucking amazing. I would have bought a book saying how to be okay with being an asshole. Oh, that's so funny.
Thanks, Kyle. Next time I'm gonna come with a PR plan and marketing to you, like
Yeah.
there's gonna be another book. No, but honestly, thank you so much for your support and literally taking the time to read the manuscript when I sent it to you and also for your friendship. And it's been so amazing to just see you like
Yeah.
becoming more and more of you, and it's great. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're out there doing the things that you enjoy. And yeah, it's amazing. I get emotional, you see, so I'm gonna have to go now. No, it's great to see, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.